Latin 2, the reading for Chapter 6, Latin for the New Millennium, Level 2, Second Edition, Part 4, the 5th and 6th paragraph. Okay. Tunc imperator ad filium secundum statim scripsit. Then the emperor immediately wrote to his second daughter, who responded. Now we're going to go into indirect statement. Get ready for this. It's going to sound funny, but I think you'll get it. Her father to be able to live or to dwell with her, and her husband. I'm adding the word her to her husband. It's just husband in Latin, but remember you can add those possessives if you want. Okay. And to have food and clothing. So literally, her father to be able to live with her and her husband and to have food and clothing. We in English would say, who answered that her father could stay or to live with her and her husband and have food and clothing. Sed nihil aliud promissit. But promissit, she promised. Nihil aliud, nothing other. In other words, nothing else. We would say in English, nothing else. It's literally in Latin, nothing other, but we would say nothing else in English. But she promised nothing else. Imperata tunc erat valde tristis. The emperor then was very sad and said, Duabus filiabus sum deceptus. I was deceived, right? This is the perfect passive indicative. I was deceived. Notice it's made with the present tense of sum, but it's got a past translation in English. Or you could even say I have been deceived. You can say I have been deceived too, because remember this, the perfect can be translated both by the simple past, I was deceived, and by the present perfect, I have been deceived. Okay? I have been deceived by two daughters. This is an ablative, and it's kind of strange here. I think there's an error in the text here. I think this should be a duabus filiabus, by two daughters, right? I have been deceived by two daughters. I actually looked at the text on which this is based, the original medieval text, and they actually have something similar to that. I think this is an error in the textbook. That should be a duabus filiabus, by two daughters. So we have the emperor then was very sad and said, I have been deceived by two daughters. Duabus means two. Okay. Tunc imperator ad filium tertium statim scripsit, quae inopium patris intellexit. Then the emperor wrote immediately to his third daughter, who recognized the inopium of her father. Inopium is a kind of a hard word to translate. It means like lack of resources or helplessness or resourcelessness. Here it might mean something like desperation, right? So we have who realized or recognized the desperation of her father. So we have, then the emperor immediately wrote to his third daughter, who realized the desperation of her father. Natu minima, smallest in birth, in other words, youngest. His youngest daughter sought the aid of her husband. Mariti is a genitive, the aid of her husband. And these two, that would be the third daughter and her husband, prepared paraverant exercitum magnum, a great army, quem contra hostis imperatores duxerunt, which they led against the enemies of the emperor. Emperor is genitive here, right? After, here's postquam. Remember, this is the word for after that has to have like a subject verb after it. It has to have a clause. It's technically a subordinating conjunction. Okay. After the enemies were defeated, the third daughter and her husband restored the emperor into power. We probably say English restored him to power. Probably restored him to power. Okay. The father therefore praised, laudavit, the third daughter strongly, who had been, fuerat, of course, is the pluperfect of the verb sum, so it means had been, who had been fidelior, more faithful, quam aliae filii, than the other daughters. This daughter, facta est, was made an heir, or maybe the heir, probably the heir, like heir in the sense of someone who inherits. This daughter was made the heir of the emperor. And after the death of the father, she held the height of power for many years in peace. Multos annos is an accusative expression of time, and it tells how long something goes on. So it means for many years. Okay, so one more time. And after the death of her father, notice like post takes is a preposition and takes the noun mortem as its object. After the death of her father, she held the height of power for many years in peace. The end.